There are some places where the haunting begins before anything happens, before a door opens by itself, before footsteps cross an empty room, before something unseen moves in the dark. Sometimes all it takes is the journey there. Alder Cottage stands on the edge of Loch Ericht, deep in the central highlands of Scotland, beneath the mountain that gives it its name. You have to walk for miles through lonely country, across rough ground, through water and weather, until the modern world falls away behind you. And then, at last, the cottage appears. Small, remote, silent.
New England summers don't exactly ease you in. One minute the windows are open, the next your apartment feels unbearable. Well, meet Windmill Air. Windmill window ACs are sleek. They're quiet and cool your space fast without the bulky eyesore. Rated the #1 easiest AC to install, Windmill lets you adjust temperatures right from your phone and, unlike traditional units, cools your room more evenly like central air. Shop Windmill online at windmillair.com or pick up an AC at your nearest Target or Home Depot. Windmill, modern air care your room deserves.
Feel your best and amplify your everyday look with Thrive Cosmetics. Go to thrivecosmetics.com/shine26 for an exclusive offer of 20% off your first order. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/shine26.
We all belong outside. We're drawn to nature, whether it's the recorded sounds of the ocean we doze off to, or the succulents that adorn our homes. Nature makes all of our lives, well, better. Despite all this, we often go about our busy lives removed from it. But the outdoors is closer than we realize. With AllTrails, you can discover trails nearby and explore confidently. With offline maps and on-trail navigation, download the free app today and make the most of your summer with AllTrails.
New England summers don't exactly ease you in. One minute the windows are open, the next your apartment feels unbearable. Well, meet Windmill Air. Windmill window ACs are sleek. They're quiet and cool your space fast without the bulky eyesore. Rated the #1 easiest AC to install, Windmill lets you adjust temperatures right from your phone and, unlike traditional units, cools your room more evenly like central air. Shop Windmill online at windmillair.com or pick up an AC at your nearest Target or Home Depot. Windmill, modern air care your room deserves.
We all belong outside. We're drawn to nature, whether it's the recorded sounds of the ocean we doze off to, or the succulents that adorn our homes. Nature makes all of our lives, well, better. Despite all this, we often go about our busy lives removed from it. But the outdoors is closer than we realize. With AllTrails, you can discover trails nearby and explore confidently. With offline maps and on-trail navigation, download the free app today and make the most of your summer with AllTrails.
Hello, I'm Sarah.
I'm Toby.
And welcome to the Whispering Woods podcast. This episode is all about
The Alder Cottage.
Yeah, we're staying in Scotland again. So if you didn't catch yesterday's episode, we were in Scotland and I covered a story that I'd found from a newspaper clipping, and this is the same thing. I've been diving into those old archives, old newspapers, and finding some really interesting stories. But first of all, we have a new patron.
Granny Ashby.
Yeah, hi Granny Ashby. I feel rude saying that. Hi Granny. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. We really, really appreciate it.
Oh yes, thank you.
If you'd like to support the podcast, you can do so by visiting patreon.com/The Whispering Woods, where for a small monthly fee, you can listen ad-free and in advance. And we're also on Apple Premium. Now, I am picking up social media, Now, I am picking up social media again because I've got really excited about these newspaper clips, and I'll be showing the clips and reading them as well. That's the plan for my little bit of social media, because I think I can just about manage that, because I hate social media. Right, anyway, are you ready for the story?
Yes, I am.
Today's story takes us to one of Scotland's loneliest shelters, Ben Alder Cottage, also known as McCook's Bothy. The Mountain Bothies Association says the present building dates to 1871 and that it was last inhabited around 1918 by Joseph McCook, a deer forester who had lived in that isolated cottage for almost 40 years. The building was first renovated by the Mountain Bothies Association in 1969, turning it into the kind of rough shelter used by walkers, climbers, and people drawn to wild places. But the cottage also carries another reputation, a reputation that appears in old newspaper clippings. In 1978, the Dundee Courier and Advertiser ran a piece titled The Haunted Bothy of Ben Alder. In 1985, the Courier and Advertiser printed another short item under the heading Haunted Cottage, responding to a reader's question about whether Ben Alder Cottage on the shores of Loch Ericht was haunted. That clipping gave the old story of Joseph McCook, the lonely cottage, and the belief that his spirit still haunted the place. And in more recent years, outdoor writers and visitors have continued to repeat the same kind of accounts: footsteps, groans, old-fashioned music, and objects moving in rooms where no one else should be. So in today's episode, we're following that story from the archives to the Lochside, from a remote Highland cottage, once lived in by a deer forester, to the later Bothy that walkers still enter with a mixture of curiosity and dread. Ben Alder Cottage is not the kind of haunted place you reach by accident. There is no pub car park beside it, no ghost door sign, no village street lamp glowing outside the door. It sits on the shore of Loch Ericht in the Central Highlands, beneath Ben Alder itself. The landscape is beautiful, but it's not gentle. This is a country of water, bog, mountain, deer paths, rough weather, and long distances. Even modern visitors describe the route as a serious walk, around 8 or 9 miles from the nearest road, with river crossings and ground that can change with the weather. That matters, because isolation is not just scenery in this story, it is the story. A cottage like Ben Alder does not need a ruined tower or a blood-stained room to feel haunted. Its loneliness does the work. The idea of being inside that building after dark, knowing there are miles of moor and water between you and help, changes the way every sound behaves. A creak is not just a creak. A scrape is not just a scrape. Footsteps outside do not belong to passing traffic or neighbours returning late. There should be no one there, and that is when a place begins to work on the mind. The old newspaper clipping from 1985 describes Ben Alder Cottage as a former deer watcher's cottage on Sir John Ramson's estate. It says Joseph McCook lived there with his father for many years and had to cross Loch Ericht by boat, then travel overland to Rannochside for provisions. That single detail tells us almost everything. To live there was to live at a distance from ordinary life. Food, news, company, church, doctors, gossip, the comfort of other voices. All of it required effort. The loch had to be crossed, the land had to be travelled. Weather could trap you, darkness could arrive before you are ready. And in winter, the cottage must have felt less like a home than an outpost at the edge of the world. That is where Joseph McCook enters the story. Not as a ghost at first, as a man, a deer forester, a stalker, Highland worker tied to the estate and the land around it. For nearly 40 years, according to the Mountain Bothies Association, McCook lived in this isolated cottage. That kind of life is difficult to imagine now. Not a weekend adventure, but year after year in a place most people would only visit briefly, and even then with maps, waterproofs, and a planned route out. The haunting tradition says that after his father died, the loneliness became too much. The 1985 newspaper gives that version plainly. Joseph McCook was said to have become so depressed by the loneliness of the place after his father's death that he took his own life, and that his spirit was reputed to haunt the cottage. I'll phrase that carefully, as this is the tradition attached to the body, not something we can treat as a proven fact from the clipping alone. But folklore does not always survive because it is tidy. It survives because it gives shape to a feeling, and at Ben Alder, the feeling is clear. A lonely man, a remote cottage, a death story, and a building later used by strangers who arrive after a long walk and sleep inside the place where the story says he remains. Ben Alder Cottage is also known as McCook's Bothy. A bothy is a shelter, usually remote and basic, used by walkers and people moving through wild country. It's not a hotel. It offers walls, a roof, and sometimes a fireplace or sleeping platform. You do not know who slept there before you. You do not know what they left behind. You don't know what sounds the building makes when the wind comes down from the hill or moves across the loch. Modern descriptions of Ben Alder Cottage talk about its remoteness, its rough shelter, and its reputation as one of Scotland's most haunted bothies. Some visitors describe the inside as sparse and unsettling, rooms with old furniture, dark corners, sleeping platforms, cobwebs, and the strange collection of objects that accumulate in places used by passing strangers. Bothies are communal, but not always occupied. They are places where people briefly share shelter with strangers, or with the traces of strangers, a mat left behind, a tin, a note, something placed on a mantelpiece by someone who may have passed through months before. And in a haunted bothy, every abandoned object seems to suggest a previous presence. At Ben Alder, these presences gather around McCook. The 1985 article says the question of whether the cottage was haunted had come from a reader. A man named Tom Marshall of Tullibody responded with a photograph he'd taken of the cottage while walking there with his dog. He identified it as the former Deer Watcher's cottage and gave the story of Joseph McCook and the haunting. A reader asks, another reader replies, a photograph is sent, and through an ordinary newspaper column, the ghost story is passed on again. By then, the cottage had already been carrying the reputation for some time. The 1978 Dundee Courier and Advertiser clipping called it the haunted bothy of Ben Alder, showing that the story was not confined to one later mention. And it didn't stop there. modern accounts still describe the Bothy as haunted. Walkers have written of unexplained footsteps, groans, old-fashioned music played in an unoccupied room, and even objects being thrown. One outdoor writer who stayed there alone in 2023 described the cottage as remote, unsettling, and filled with stories of strange activity. There is another legend attached to Ben Alder Cottage, darker than the tale of Joseph McCook. It should be handled carefully because it appears in later retellings and is harder to pin down in the older newspaper material. It's part of the modern folklore of the place, and it shows how heavily the cottage has become charged with fear. The story says that a woman and her infant once took shelter there during a storm, trapped by weather, cut off from help, and driven by hunger and desperation. The woman is said to have killed and eaten her child. Afterwards, she was seen wandering the moorland, wild-eyed and broken, before disappearing into the boggy ground and never returning. It's a grim story, perhaps too grim to be true in any literal sense, but as folklore, it belongs to the same emotional landscape as the McCook haunting. Isolation, hunger, weather, loneliness, and the terror of being too far from help. Ben Alder Cottage sits in a place where human beings are small. The land is beautiful, but it's not forgiving. The loch, the hill, the cold and the distance all remind you that shelter is fragile. A body can save you, but it also can hold you. It can become the one lit place in miles of darkness, and that makes it both comforting and frightening. One of the best known accounts connected to Ben Alder Cottage comes from the mountaineer and writer Sid Scroggie. Scroggie was already an extraordinary figure before he ever reached Ben Alder. He'd been blinded during the Second World War, but continued to walk, climb and travel through the Scottish mountains with a determination that made him well known in outdoor circles. So this was not someone easily dismissed as timid, fanciful, or unfamiliar with lonely places. In November 1963, Scroggie visited Ben Alder Cottage with a companion. The story was later retold in outdoor writing connected to the Scottish Mountaineering Club Journal, and it remains one of the accounts most often repeated when people talk about the Bothy's haunted reputation. By then, Ben Alder Cottage already had all the ingredients of fear. A remote loch, a mountain pressing close, a long walk back to the road, a dark building with an old name, and an older sadness attached to it. But that night, the fear was not only in the setting. According to the account, once Scroggie and his companion had settled inside the cottage, the noises began. Tappings, scratchings, footsteps, groans. The kind of sounds that, in an ordinary house, might be blamed on neighbours, pipes or floorboards. Someone moving in the next room. But in Alder Cottage, there should have been no one else. This is what makes these stories work so well. It's not that every sound is impossible. It's that the place removes so many ordinary explanations. You know who you walked in with. You know how far you are from everyone else. You know that outside the walls there is only the dark, the loch, the hill, and the long emptiness around them. So when something taps or scrapes or seems to move with weight and intention, the mind has nowhere comfortable to put it. The account does not describe a figure appearing at the door. There's no pale face at the window, no hand reaching from the shadows. Instead, the body seems to make itself heard, as if something unseen is moving around its edges, testing the walls, answering the presence of the people inside. And then, by morning, the strangeness had not entirely gone. A packet of biscuits, reportedly sitting on the mantelpiece, was said to have been thrown across the room. It's not dramatic, it's not a cursed object or an old relic. It is ordinary, practical, the kind of thing walkers carry, eat, forget, leave beside a fire. But that's why it's so unnerving, because in a body, ordinary things are supposed to stay ordinary. Scroggy himself later wondered whether the disturbance might somehow have reflected the tension between him and the person he was travelling with. That gives the story a slightly different feel from a straightforward ghost sighting. It feels almost poltergeist-like, as though the body was not simply occupied by a spirit, but reacting to something brought inside. Because many of the stories attached to it are not clean, clear apparitions. They are sounds, movements, impressions, things heard in the dark, objects shifted or thrown, doors opening, a sense of presence that never quite becomes a body. And Scroggy's experience did not end his connection with the place. He later returned to Ben Alder Cottage with his daughter Mary. On that visit, the reported disturbance was simpler, but still unnerving. The body door was said to have crashed open, without any obvious cause. In another building, you might expect a draft, a poor latch, but at Ben Alder, even a door becomes difficult to dismiss, because the cottage stands in a place where every ordinary explanation has to cross miles of darkness before it reaches you. A sound is never just a sound there. A movement is never entirely harmless. Not when you're alone, or nearly alone, in a shelter already known for footsteps, groans and scratching. Decades later, people are still going to Ben Alder Cottage to test the story for themselves. In 2023, outdoor creator Chris Knight made the long journey in alone for a Halloween challenge. In his own write-up on his website, he describes arriving at a place that already seemed to live up to its reputation. Ben Alder Cottage, he says, is split into two parts. The old stone section is the bothy, open for walkers to use, while the timber-built extension is kept for estate use. Inside, the public bothy is basic, dark, and in his words, sinister-looking. There are 3 rooms and a small porch. The middle room is the smallest, with a wooden bunk bed and one small window letting in very little light. One room has a metal wood-burning stove and a sleeping platform. The room on the other side, he says, felt the creepiest. A stone fireplace, a window, and a wooden bench that did not look as if it would offer much comfort for the night. The bothy was filled with the strange leftovers of people who had passed through before him. Sleeping mats, a blunt axe, 2 pairs of knock-off Crocs, and the sort of random objects that feel harmless in daylight, but take on a different quality once the dark closes in. There was also a sheep's skull, and plenty of cobwebs. Chris chose the room that felt the warmest and safest, the one with the stove, joking that he did not want to be murdered in his sleep. Then, after dropping his bag, he left the bothy for a while and climbed Ben Alder. By the time he returned, it was already past sunset. Twilight still hung over the loch, so he washed quickly in the water, which he described as Baltic, then went back inside. The cottage was still empty. By then it was very dark and very cold. He lit candles, got the fire going, cooked himself steak ramen, which he admitted was rather luxurious for a bothy, and finally began to settle down for the night. And that was when the reality of where he was started to sink in. He had no phone signal. He was around 14 kilometres from the nearest road. He'd seen only 4 people all day, and now he was alone in one of Britain's most famously haunted bobbies. The stories he'd read before arriving began to sit heavier in his mind. Every scrape, every shift of the building, every sound outside seemed louder than it should have. It was also rutting season, and the stags were bellowing through the dark, their calls echoing across the emptiness around Loch Ericht. Then he made the mistake of reading the Bothy book. Most of the entries were positive, walkers thanking the Mountain Bothies Association, praising the shelter, leaving notes about their stay. But, as Chris put it, like someone drawn to the worst review on TripAdvisor, his mind fixed on the handful of entries that mentioned ghosts and strange noises. By then, the firewood had run out. The temperature inside the Bothy began to fall again. He went outside to photograph the cottage under a sky full of stars, and noticed a stag standing only about 30 metres away. Then he went back inside, barricaded the door with a chair and a table, put in his earplugs, climbed into his winter sleeping bag, and hoped he would not be visited in the night. And that's the difficulty with sleeping somewhere like Ben Alder Cottage. You don't arrive innocent. You arrive with the story inside your head. The lonely walk-in, the empty rooms, the skull on the wall, the objects left by strangers, the stags calling outside, the old accounts of footsteps, groans, music, and movement where there should be none. By the time the candles burn low and the fire dies back, the body does not have to do very much. It only has to make a sound. The haunting at Ben Alder does not affect everyone the same way. Writer Alex Roddy approached in winter after travelling from Carroll, stepping from a warm train into snow and darkness, already conscious that this was known as the Haunted One. The unease for him began before the body itself, in the abrupt loneliness of the journey, the storm, and the sense of walking towards a place with a reputation. But when he finally reached the cottage, exhausted and cold, he found something different. In his own account, Ben Alder did not feel hostile. It felt warm, welcoming, almost kind. There was firewood by the stove, candles, whiskey left behind by previous visitors, and the messages in the Bothy book cheered him. He slept deeply, heard no ghostly noises, and felt no sinister presence. If there was a ghost there, he wondered. Perhaps it was a friendly one. By 1978, newspapers were already calling it the Haunted Body of Ben Alder. By 1985, readers were still asking whether the cottage was haunted, and others were writing in with the story of Joseph McCook and the lonely house on Loch Ericht. Decades later, people were still making the journey there, still sleeping under its roof, still listening through the dark for sounds they could not explain. That's the strange thing about bodies. They are never truly yours. You might be alone there, but you're surrounded by traces of everyone who came before. Ash in the hearth, names in a visitor book, boot marks by the door, a tin left on the shelf, a chair pulled close to the wall. In daylight, those traces feel human and ordinary. After dark, they can feel like company.
Introducing America's Workforce Academy, built by Meta. Paid training, a job, and a path to America's future. Because the future is for everyone. Learn more at meta.com/America's Workforce Academy.
New England summers don't exactly ease you in. One minute the windows are open, the next your apartment feels unbearable. Well, meet Windmill Air. Windmill window ACs are sleek, they're quiet, and cool your space fast without the bulky eyesore. Rated the #1 easiest AC to install, Windmill lets you adjust temperatures right from your phone and, unlike traditional units, cools your room more evenly like central air. Shop Windmill online at windmillair.com or pick up an AC at your nearest Target or Home Depot. Windmill, modern air care your room deserves.
Just the fact that it's miles and miles and miles away from civilization, that would freak me out.
Yeah.
Because nobody can hear you scream.
Yeah.
Can they? If you're in the middle of nowhere. And I can imagine somebody saying that to you if you're staying in there the night. A serial killer comes along and says, no one's gonna hear you scream.
Yeah, perfect place for
It would be.
Oh, type of horror movie.
No cameras, like as we were saying before, the UK is full of cameras, so we don't get like serial killers anymore. But that would be the perfect hunting ground, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah.
Walker has gone missing. There. Out there in the wilderness.
Yeah, where it does happen.
I'd rather have the ghosts than the serial killer.
Yeah.
I've completely made all of this up now in my mind, haven't I? Don't stay there ever.
Well, that's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed and we'll catch up with you again soon.
We will indeed. I'll catch you on Thursday for the Reddit and listener story episode. And then again on Sunday for that story I mentioned on morphocholery, which is a really good one. Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.
Every wireless service comes with a cost, right? Wrong. The Text Now app lets you do your thing for free. Get real talk, real text, and 5G data for must-have apps with no monthly bill. Need more data? Add it right from the app. Done? Go back to free. No long-term contracts, no pressure, no surprises. Just wireless that works around you. Text Now. We've got your back. Download Text Now in your app store today. Wireless plans require the purchase of a SIM card. Visit textnow.com for terms and conditions.
Introducing America's Workforce Academy, built by Meta. Paid training, a job, and a path to America's future. Because the future is for everyone. Learn more at meta.com/America's Workforce Academy.
New England summers don't exactly ease you in. One minute the windows are open, the next your apartment feels unbearable. Well, meet Windmill Air. Windmill window ACs are sleek, they're quiet, and cool your space fast without the bulky eyesore. Rated the #1 easiest AC to install, Windmill lets you adjust temperatures right from your phone and, unlike traditional units, cools your room more evenly like central air. Shop Windmill online at windmillair.com or pick up an AC at your nearest Target or Home Depot. Windmill, modern air care your room deserves.
The stories told on the Whispering Woods are inspired by historical records, witness reports, and local folklore. While every effort is made to research and represent events accurately, some details, names, and locations may differ from official accounts or have been changed out of respect for those involved. These episodes are created for storytelling and entertainment purposes and should not be considered definitive fact or investigative journalism.